Alrighty, well, it's Monday afternoon at 5 p.m. You're live with Will and Dyl, and today we've got some special guests in from Fusion Athletics, called Nazaria Lamawan and Stuart Diplock. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Hi, guys.
Hello, team. Hello.
How we doing?
Welcome to Will and Dyl's podcast.
Yeah, well, let's see how it all goes. It's going to get there eventually. So, big news, guys. You guys you've been together for quite some time, or living together at least. Let's put it that way. But you recently decided to collaborate and form this awesome company called Fusion Athletics. Tell us all a little bit about it and give us a bit of a background. And last but not least, tell us what you guys are actually doing.
So I'll just start with how we decided to collaborate. So we've actually been thinking about it for quite a while. I think I wouldn't say like the past year, but probably like 6 months. But we never really, sat down and discussed it because again, like life happens and you don't really think about these things until you're put into a spot where you're in circuit breaker and you're like, okay,
that's all you can do.
That's all you can do. So I mean, it's been in our heads for a while, like trying to, I guess, merge two minds together. I've always known Stu's very knowledgeable in his training side. I mean, both of us do train people and train clients, but I know he's more, that's his main strength. And then for me, I've always been into the nutrition side of things. So I think that kind of sparked the idea of, doing both at the same time. We also have been training the same clients in Mobilis where we work at. So that also sparked the idea. So let's say an example is we have a few clients where they see Stu to train weightlifting and then see me to train gymnastics. So I think all of these like small ideas kind of led us to creating this Fusion Athletics.
Right, it's awesome. And at the moment, who's your target market? I know there's, a lot of guys are either kind of focusing really on performance or a bit more of a general population. What have you guys done?
So we went for the approach of, like, we both enjoy working with, performance athletes, but there's not that many out there, especially in Singapore, who haven't already got a guaranteed coach they've worked with for a while, or they have their national governing body that does this sort of thing for them. So while we really enjoy working with that, there's not that many out there. So we're more going towards the, tend to term like a corporate athlete, or someone who wants to live like a high performance lifestyle is the term we use.
Good demographic.
So someone who wants to be high performing in all areas of their life. Someone who likes being active, moving well, being a bit competitive with their sport, with their training hard. Also looking after their nutrition well, but they want to function at work. They want to function well outside of training, at home, live a good quality life. So it's kind of an all-encompassing, move well, look good, train hard, but be able to function outside of training. So life isn't all about training. That's kind of the demographic we're going after in particular. That be men, women, all ages really. Yeah. We're looking to branch, me personally, a little bit more into kind of the youth strength conditioning side. I used to do a bit of that. And I personally believe that's a big area in Singapore that is untapped at the moment. There's a lot of youth athletes who don't really have much guidance, or the guidance they're giving isn't fantastic, but that's a little bit further down the line for both of us.
Nice. That's awesome. It's a very encompassing market for Singapore, definitely. I think it's something that we've all seen working together in different forms and different ways is that high executive who we have less control over their lifestyle, but they still want to run on all gas. And I think it's super interesting to get someone to be able to function like that. And like you said, it's definitely a demographic you could work with over here. And then what would differentiate you from other guys? We'll talk Singapore and then look a bit further beyond, because you guys compete in Bali, you compete in Australia, you've done South Asia, etc., etc. So obviously you're international. But what would you say differentiates you from the rest, not just in Singapore?
So we kind of go for, both of us are what we would consider, I know it's a very overly used term, but kind of evidence-based practitioners. We like to, we're both interested in the science behind things, but I think we both feel that there's a lot more to it than that. You can be very evidence-based, but being able to put that across to the client effectively and just genuinely care about them and be a good person is as important, if not more important. So setting us aside would be, we kind of encompass all of that. We keep up to date with current literature, current research, the evidence-based best practices in the industry, but we want to work really closely with people. Often online coaching can be very generic and very kind of like, here's a cookie cutter plan, get after it. We're going to keep it relatively small, and we both work full time at CrossFit Mobilus, not CrossFit Mobilus. That's going to take a while to get that out.
It's okay, guys. You guys are forgiven.
You got the t-shirt on, mate. No one knows anything any other different.
Yeah, exactly. We both work full time, so we want to keep it relatively small, and I think that's quite important. Something we've all seen. I think, Dyl, you've been kind of experienced this as well. That a lot of companies who specialize in online training kind of grow too big too quick. And then that success ends up being their demise. They end up not being able to offer the product they sell, and you end up finding that coaches, just through being too busy and having too many clients, they're just copying and pasting programs to people, not delivering what they're selling. So we want to keep it kind of very manageable for us to be able to deliver a really good service to those people.
Yeah, I just wanted to add as well, I think how we differentiate from the other kind of companies, especially in Singapore, there's actually not many online personalized programming for functional fitness in Singapore, because obviously it's slowly growing, the whole online remote programming, whether it's to do with nutrition or training for the functional fitness aspiring athletes or just people who do functional fitness. So we, in the long run, like we'd like to kind of like grow it, especially in the Southeast Asian market, because I know there's not any kind of online remote programming companies in Southeast Asia. I know there's process programming, but
there's one or two. But
there's one or two, but I know, like, I think it's the right time to kind of get that going, especially with the whole situation with Glassman and CrossFit being kind of going down at the moment. I think it's definitely a good, starting point, especially right now.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where the whole industry goes. But we're solid believers in the functional fitness style of training is here to stay. I mean, good examples are like, Will, you spent some time at 98 Riley Street in Australia, right? It's only going to get bigger, that style of training where you're using functional fitness. There's that competitive environment. People want to train hard and train properly. And if anything, this whole kind of CrossFit situation is just going to allow more places like that to flourish.
Absolutely. I think it's one of the biggest things that I've found over the last couple of weeks and months is that competitive edge with fitness. I think the era of the aesthetics is, even look at Marcus Philly. It's all based around function. It's not based around, he's shredded wheat, but he's not asking what his diet is. Everything's about his mobility and his dynamism and that kind of stuff. So it's definitely a target area. That's awesome.
Yeah, let's chat a little further about programming, and this is directed potentially at Stuart for the moment. Sorry, Naz. What is your philosophy with regards to programming? Obviously, it's going to change slightly between performance and general population. And over the kind of circuit breaker time, what have been some of the couple of things that you've been struggling with your online, with regards to your online clients? Kind of the pitfalls that you see in online programming?
Yeah, so kind of first off, I'll go through my kind of philosophy as when it comes to a coach and kind of programming for people. I mean, it's pretty simple, but I think it's often missed, is always prioritizing long-term progress over short-term results. So it's very, very easy to get carried away with, hey, like, I'm going to write you a squat program in 6 weeks' time, you'll squat more than you ever squatted. But then the squat volume you're doing so kind of like unmaintainable that another couple of weeks down the line, they can't keep hold of that squat number, especially in something like functional fitness where you've got to be good at so many things. If you're not squatting 4 times a week, you can't get anywhere near that number, so it's almost irrelevant. Whereas if we can talk about now and a year and a half down the line, have you added 20 kilo to your squat, which we can consistently maintain? So that long-term progression over a big time period versus that short-term, hey, look how much I got you in 5 weeks. I think that's something which the industry really needs to start paying more attention to, full stop, is that results versus progression are very different.
Yeah.
Another one.
Just speak for myself. Like, I think the sport of functional fitness has, because it's kind of so sexy, all right? Like, people want overnight results, right? And with regards to kind of a broader spectrum of the fitness world, I think there's no group of people that want quicker results and are less impatient than many of the other kind of, whether it's bodybuilding or it's functional fitness, just breed a lot of impatient people, I think.
And with I love functional fitness and it's got so much potential, but it's also, because it's so varied, it's very easy to mistake like normal ebbs and flows in performance as progression. And it's really easy to be like, oh, I'm just going to do some more snatching for 4 weeks. That means I've got better at it, rather than just you're more practiced at that particular movement. Whereas like I fall into this trap myself where you constantly go through those cycles of, oh, I'm not fit enough, so I do more fitness work. Or I'm not strong enough, so you go back and do strength work. And then you look back a year and you're like, oh, I've actually gone nowhere in any of those. Like long-term wise, you've just kind of juggled them a little bit and stayed the same. So, I mean, both of you will attest to this. It's actually easier to program for other people than it is for yourself.
Absolutely.
That's why at the moment I don't have a specific coach, but I've been following a programming, but I have done most of my competitive career. I mean, Dylan, I do your programming for you and have done it for a fair bit in the past. Like, regardless of whether you know how to do it yourself, writing it for yourself is very different, and actually following it. But I think that's important in functional fitness, is there's so many elements to it that it's really easy to just mistake.
So with regards to the programming, and I think this is the massive one, is individualized programming within functional fitness. And where does that kind of place itself within regards to guys that do group classes and understand the community aspect to it? We were part of an amazing community, and still are, the bigger CrossFit kind of community itself. But like the sport, and I think that's where you start dealing with kind of performance compared to general population, or alternatively, even general population kind of athletes, like your kind of avatar you were speaking a little bit earlier. The guy that works in oil and gas and wants to just kind of optimize his life a little bit. That's a great opportunity for individualized programming, instead of just beasting yourself in doing classes. And obviously, if the programming is not correctly done in classes itself.
I think it's something where it's like a really hotly debated topic of like, should you do classes, or if you're past a certain point of performance, you should just do individual. I think it really, really depends. Like, there's people who will get significantly better from going to a well-structured class programming and a well-structured class group situation than if you were to put them in open gym by themselves and get them to follow to your letter your programming, because they're not going to enjoy it. They're there for the social element mainly. They like being pushed by others. They're kind of motivated by extrinsic factors of beating their friends rather than actually wanting to kind of be the best version of themselves. People are motivated by different things. So I think it comes down to what that individual person wants. I'm starting to lean towards like the whole group training, slightly individualized design a little bit more, where you've got the conditioning section, which is you'd train in a group, but the strength, skill, prep work, that sort of thing be a little bit more individualized. I mean, that's something that's quite difficult to implement, especially in kind of the climate that Singapore's in fitness-wise. I don't think it's there yet, but I think a couple of years down the line it might be. But yeah, it kind of depends on the individual. So like discussing that with people and making a bit of a hybrid of it. I mean, a lot of my clients, and Naz is the same, and I'm sure you and still are actually, they always, and actually will with the BJJ stuff, they come to you for work which supports what they do outside. So people will come to myself to work specifically on, say, weightlifting, Naz more so the gymnastics or nutrition, which will support their class-based stuff. I mean, classes, they can't cater for everyone, but they can cater for kind of the average generalized avatar of a person. And if you can fill in the gaps of what they're missing with extra work, or like, okay, you're not going to class that day, you're going to come see me and we're going to work on this, then you can kind of get a best of both worlds. I think it's a little unfair and a little, when people say like individual design is the only way, you have to have a coach of programs just for you, you need to follow your own programming. Like, yes, to a certain degree, but some people that's just not going to work for. They don't want to do that. It might be the optimal way, but it's probably not going to be the most successful way for them. It's not going to be practical for them. I think it's Ben Bruno, like practicality beats perfection every single time. And like group classes or small group kind of generalized can actually be individualized every now and again, or fairly often if it's done properly.
Yeah.
That's my opinion on that.
And just dealing with, just coming still around the programming of things, what are your guys' takes on absolutely removing snatching and kipping kind of exercises in CrossFit classes?
Ooh.
That's the big question. That's the big. I think we're both in agreement on this one. That for some people it's fantastic. For other people, it's the worst thing they could possibly do.
I think, again, I'd like to add on that. I feel like it's definitely movements, so like for snatching and kipping. I think most importantly for like kipping and gymnastic movements, obviously there should be like prerequisites before trying to do kipping pull-ups or before trying to do kipping handstand push-ups. Like we're not pro advocates of people trying to be like, yeah, it's okay to just go into class and do as many kipping pull-ups as possible. Like at the end of the day, it's again quality over quantity. Like you want to be able to, coach these guys the prerequisites before, encouraging them to do a movement they're not ready to do.
So coming back to that question, like, and as we coach kind of back in the day at some other place, so there were always prerequisites for like kipping, right? And let's say, like we would say you have to do like 5 to 10 strict pull-ups before you could even attempt to kip. And Organ, is it like us just saying that because that was like what we all were saying? Because if you look at the movement, it's almost very different. So, yeah. And there's a lot of extra, like if I do, let's say 50 kipping pull-ups, like the next day I'm going to be pretty sore and I could potentially hurt my shoulder quite badly or impinge, create a lot of impingements, but I can easily do 10 strict pull-ups. So like, do you understand my point? Like,
yeah.
How is it measurable?
Is it like, what's the point, like, end of the day, if you're not going to compete?
If you're not going to compete, again, I think it depends. My viewpoint on kipping is I think it's wrongly kind of categorized as an exercise. I think it's often put into like a strength-based movement. I don't think it is. It's more of a plyometric for your upper body. It's that stretch shortening cycle. It's hitting end range and rebounding from that. And if you treat it like that, then there's a clear pathway of how you need to develop that. You need to be able to develop the underpinning physical capacities to deal with that. I mean, it's not inherently a bad exercise. Like, I'm one of the believers there's no such thing as an inherently bad exercise. There's always the context in which that exercise is under.
Application.
Yeah, right? And there's going to be people which realistically should never do a kipping pull-up. But there's other people who definitely should and can. And if they can use it as a way of developing physical capacities elsewhere, then why not? It's difficult, and the issue with CrossFit as a thing is it's got the sport and then you've got the training methodology. And people see the sport, they see other people doing kipping pull-ups, but they don't see the years of work that's gone into getting there and the hours of practice. Like, we can attest to this still. I'm same for Nats. Like, how long it took for us to get to the ability we have with kipping pull-ups, which realistically is nowhere near you need to be a professional CrossFitter. And the people who are attending normal class, they're not willing to put in that work to get there. They're not going to do the EMOMs of 70% of their kipping pull-ups because it's not necessary for them. So if you're not willing to put in the work to build the base, then you don't deserve to do the thing. So it's a difficult one because if you put them in class, people are going to want to do them. You're like dangling it in front of their nose, like, oh, this is a cool thing. There's other people that can do it. And then telling them, look, you're not ready for this. You need to be able to have that conversation with them and bring them back to why they came in the gym in the first place.
Does that happen quite regularly for you? Do you have quite a big crossover between, like you said, the sexy stuff to your bread and butter? You've got 90% of people in there need to do a single leg lunge pattern, need to do a bit of squatting and get some aerobic capacity, but Mary Muffin Top rolls in and wants to do snatches and kipping pull-ups. Do you have that conversation quite often, or is there quite like a good degree of people's sort of understanding of how hard that is?
Interestingly, they very rarely roll in the door wanting to do that. They roll in the door wanting to lose some weight, get in a bit better shape, be a bit more fit. And then a month down the line, when they've drunk the Kool-Aid and they see other people doing it, that's when they want to do it. And that's, it's the age-old issue with CrossFit and functional fitness. And it is difficult for me to say that, like, oh, we always have that conversation and it's like just down to coaching would be a lie. There's people who will take that on board and there's people who will listen to us and there's people who never will. And you can say it till you're blue in the face and they're going to continue doing it.
Again, it's similar to whether it's training or nutrition. Like, you can tell someone, like, let's say a particular person who, you know, are not basically listening to what you say, you can tell them like 100 million times, but they just won't change. So it really depends on different personalities and different individuals. Like, there's just people that would never change or listen to what you tell them to.
And that used to get me down, to be honest. That used to really grind on me of like, you're seeing someone do stuff you've told them a million times they shouldn't be doing, and then they hurt themselves again. But it's actually something my coach said to me not long ago was, if you give someone the tools to help them and they decide not to use them, that's not your problem as a coach anymore. That's not your fault. That's on them. So that made it a lot easier for me, to be honest. Is like, okay, I've offered you my opinion and I've given you the reasons and given you the tools. If you don't want to do it, don't come back to me when your shoulder's hurting.
I think, like, again, for us, like, as a team, like Fusion Athletics, like, our main long-term goal for all our clients, whether it's nutrition or training, is to be able to actually educate them through our coaching rather than just, okay, this is what I need you to do. Just do it, tick, 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 done, and then leave. It's more like I want our clients to kind of, well, obviously we want them for a long term, but let's say like they want to continue on with life without coaching, then as in when they leave Fusion Athletics or our coaching, then we want them to learn something from it rather than just be like, I didn't learn anything and then go back to like ground zero.
You want them to stay because they value our opinion and our input, but not because they can't function without us.
Well, that's the art of an effective coach. Is they should be there 6 months and not need you because they're there because they want the other things you bring to the party, rather than being just, like you said, the spreadsheet. That's what I always take with coaches. If you're just a spreadsheet and just tick the box every time, great, but what's that at the end of all this?
I think circuit breakers really kind of shown that as well, right? I mean, it's a different case if your client was very new before you went into circuit breaker, but if you've been working for someone for a year or so and they can't look after themselves a little bit during this time and be fairly autonomous, then you've been doing something wrong, realistically. And you need to, I mean, I've experienced a couple of clients being like, oh, I really don't know what to do in this situation. I'm like, oh, that's on me. That's my fault for not having provided what they need. Whether they kind of don't want to be taught and they just want to be there for someone to hold their hand through it. But you can still educate someone via that. It's been interesting.
Yeah, I think like in a bit of a weird way, and I don't want to put my foot in it here, but what happened last weekend, it was in some way, and I look at it. This is from a view of a, a coach, a trainer, whatever it might be, that kind of has a rough idea of what's going on. It could have been maybe a good thing, because like people have really jumped. I'm talking now again about the programming, not about anything else. People have now they have joined the CrossFit gym, and it's just exactly what we were speaking about a little bit earlier. Now they want to trial the sexy stuff, but they haven't earned the right to do it. And many of the gyms are starting to de-affiliating, and gyms will now start changing how they program and how they coach. It could be quite a blessing in disguise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Sure.
yeah, we definitely agree with that. It's one of those, like, without the name CrossFit on the door, you're not tied in people walking the door and expecting you to offer exactly that service. I mean, there's certain parts of it, and like, I've seen it be very successful with so many people. Coming from the kind of more traditional strength conditioning background, where it's kind of frowned upon and hated a little bit. But I've seen it be incredibly successful with a lot of people just by being enjoyable. And to take away all of those enjoyable aspects just to make it maybe slightly more effective, would that make it more effective in the long term? If someone's like, hang on a minute, I actually enjoyed doing those touch and go snatches, regardless of whether I was doing 30 kilo or the actual weight I was meant to be using. Does that mean they're going to fall out of fitness and not do it anymore, or go to something which is actually less effective for them? So I think there needs to be a balance of, like, you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater when you get rid of CrossFit and just completely change everything, because that's like that would be doing it a disservice, right? Or I mean, you've worked in it long enough that there was some amazing elements to it, and
well, it changed the landscape of the whole of the fitness industry. I'm not like I love CrossFit, but I'm shit at it. But I loved it because of the people in it. I didn't give a shit about the bells and whistles that came with it. I just like walking into a box and the place was bouncing, especially down where you guys were. That was the difference between us and our gym, was the vibe and the environment, and the people were much more of a community element. But like you said, it's interesting to see how functional fitness, or whatever they're going to call it, is going to bounce back, because of all the good that CrossFit did for the fitness industry. That after one man has done something that he obviously clearly shouldn't have, how hopefully the community isn't demonized for that, because it's brought so much positivity into people's lives, and the amount of people that have got into sport and into training and fitness and making it a daily habit. Apart from it fuels our jobs, it fuels the industry, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I think it's filled a void for a lot of people. And I think actually there's 4 of us in this conversation now, right? We used to be competitive athletes. And then all of a sudden you don't do any competitive sport anymore. And you're like, what do I train for? And it's hard to have that motivation of like, oh, I'm just going to go to the gym because of health. Like, it's hard. Yeah. And I would not be on an assault bike doing fucking sprints for health. Right?
No, but the thing is, because like, I think because we push ourselves so hard, right? And like, we know, not all the time, but like when it's go time, like, and to find that extra rep or that extra little kind of 10-second burst or something, that's where that kind of competitive edge needs to be there, right?
And those competitive people they weren't provided for in the fitness industry before. They were shuttled in, they were like squished into, okay, go and be a bodybuilder, go and diet until you hate everything. And most people don't want to do that. So like, CrossFit and functional fitness has provided a niche and an area for those people to be like, you know what, I'm excited to get back in the gym, regardless of whether they compete in competitions or not. It's created a whole platform for that, which I think is awesome. And there's people out there who just like being competitive in their life. They've never competed in a sport, or they did years ago, but they like the fact that they can go in with their mate and have a little bit of a throwdown every now and again. I mean, I don't think they should be doing it all the time. And this is something we discussed as a gym the other day, about like whether noting down scores all the time is a good thing or a bad thing. And that's the sort of thing where the step away from the brand name CrossFit and the competitiveness and the attachment to the sport is a really useful thing, where you can be like, no, we're not here to compete in a sport. We're here to train to be fitter, healthier. We can do small competitive stuff alongside that and enjoy the training. But the whole process is not to try and get you as good as CrossFit as possible. The whole process is trying to get you as fit and healthy as possible.
Yeah. And then you guys briefly earlier touched on the circuit breaker, or around the country, around the world, it's called the lockdown. What are some things that people kind of should be looking for, stepping back in the gym when the gyms open up? What should they be doing? And then again, on the other side of it, what shouldn't they be doing?
As in, I think we were planning to make like an Instagram post about it, because I think
Come on, Fusion Athletics.
Okay, but a lot of people are obviously itching to get into the gym. That's for sure. They're excited. They're like pumped. It could be in 7 days from now. It could be in 2 weeks. We don't know. But I think one thing that they shouldn't do once they come in is like do whatever they haven't been doing for the past 2 months. So let's say the past 2 months, they've been obviously doing more running, more cycling, or the stuff that they've just been doing at home. And then suddenly once the gym opens, programming is like, let's say 100 pull-ups, and they're all doing kipping pull-ups or 100 snatches. Obviously that's not something that you want to encourage on. But again, at the end of the day, it's like the programming that the gym's gonna basically do is what's important. Like if individual has a coach, then that's great. The coach has to have that responsibility of making sure that first day of the gym, this person's gonna do the stuff like slowly getting into the volume rather than jumping straight into the volume.
Yeah, it's gonna be a case of educating people on like understanding that regardless of how much training they have done at home, they're gonna have certain movement patterns, certain positions, certain exercises, which are very like detrained. Like 3 months in the grand scheme of training, like you can detrain quite a lot in 3 months in certain things. Yeah. So very few people have access to a barbell. Very few people have access to something they can do pull-ups on, for example. So building back in, I'm planning on implementing a bit of a triphasic structure to build in a lot of tendon strength, because I think that's going to be something which people will have lacked a little bit. There's going to be some movement patterns where people are incredibly volume. They've built an incredible amount of volume in. I'm guessing people are going to be incredible.
Push-ups.
Yeah.
Push-up, boss.
A lot of volume on that.
Burpees.
People are probably going to be the best they've ever been at low-level plyometric stuff. They're going to be incredibly well conditioned to running, skipping, jumps, that sort of thing. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but there's only so many times you can write like jumping lunges or jumping air squats. We're like, oh, bad enough.
Yeah.
So they're very well conditioned in that area, and often they'll still feel like they're quite fit. And that's like a bit of a dangerous combo, because they're going to go back in and probably still push themselves. So it's easing people in. For me, it's going to be trying to get people to identify what movement patterns and what exercises people are probably going to be weakest in, and then build them in very slowly. And as Naz said, it's the progression of the volume. Most injuries in training are just too much volume too soon when you're not conditioned to it. So just building that back slowly.
Yeah, I mean, same with like not just like obviously CrossFit or functional fitness, like everything else that you do, whether it's running or cycling, let's say, like a lot of people, I think the common one would be running, because again, running is like an accessible thing a lot of people do in Singapore. A lot of people tend to just jump into running thinking they can probably run a 5K every single day without injuring themselves, because it's just running. They don't see anything bad about running because it's just body weight and you're just kind of moving and walking fast. And then next thing you know, 4 weeks later, they're probably injured and then seeing physios once the physio is open. So it's, just these little things. Like I think volume and intensity is probably like the two common things that a lot of Gen Pop and just in general people misunderstand.
Yeah, they assume different exercises are the intensity rather than like how hard you're going at it, what weight you're using, or how much volume you're doing it. I mean, as someone who's got a very rudimentary understanding of running mechanics, I feel sick most times when I go outside for a walk and see people run past.
90% of the time, off.
There's like some people you're like
ankles everywhere, bro.
like you don't enjoy this. Stop doing
You're not
it.
having fun.
Stop. Just walk, mate. Enjoy it. Get a dog. Just stop being that guy.
And due to the fact like that a lot of the work in the circuit breaker has been probably body weight stuff, I could imagine.
Yeah.
And people have tried to like now really turn the intensity on, because what do you do, because there's no weights now to slow them down, or there's no educational knowledge with regards to doing even body weight stuff with tempo. I think this is what's going to kind of confuse people when they come back into the gym, right? As soon as they they want to understand what a rate of perceived exertion is, because for the last 3 months they've done everything at like 8, 9, 10 potentially on their perceived exertion. So that'd be quite a challenge as well to like just to rein them back and say we have to like reestablish the building blocks again.
For sure.
Yeah.
And it's like that's one of the good things about the functional fitness classes is we have control over the programming. So as long as we do that intelligently and talk to people, I mean, that's going to be one of the biggest things. At the moment, we're still trying to work out how the classes are even going to work. Are they going to have to be 45 minutes long because we need to cram in 20 classes a day? Are they going to be capped at 5, 9, whatever amount of people? So the programming is obviously going to revolve a bit around that. But it's going to be an education thing. And I personally am actually quite excited about it. It's going to be a chance to almost start back and build back properly. Very rarely do you get the chance of people come in and be like, okay, like whether you like it or not, you are not ready to do this. Like I'm not telling you that all the fitness you've done in the past, like if someone walks in brand new and you're like, you're not ready to do pull-ups, they're like, how do you know? And I'm like, well, I know now you've not done enough training in the last 3 months to be doing this. So everyone's starting from that level playing field. I mean, it's actually quite a useful time to get new members as well in the gym. It's a good advertising platform. I mean, people have realized how important health and fitness is. That doesn't matter how much money you've got. If you're not healthy, then the Rona's still going to get you.
Yeah.
And don't go and protest. Outdoors, you're going to get the Rona.
Rona.
And now we don't have the CrossFit name on the front door anymore. And we've lowered the barrier of entry. It's going to come in and we're all starting down here now. Whereas before it was people walking the door where our current members were up here, and in the CrossFit style, functional fitness style movements, the newbies were down here, whereas everyone's there now. Yeah. So it's a good starting point of like, all right, we can do this properly. We can build people up. We're actually quite excited about it, to be honest.
No, I think it's going to be the same for us. I think it's us as coaches as well, isn't it? Like, I mean, we've had time to sit back and actually. It's similarly, rather than physical, it's more like you said about your business. Is like this time period has given you the ability to sit back and really evaluate where you're trying to take everything. Which it's the same for me personally, and Dyl's the same. I assume in this respect of like you now have a lot more vision of where you're trying to get to. And I think training very much mimics what life's doing at the moment. Is we all had to. The Rona sat us on the floor and said, "Stop and just wait."
Yeah.
Now we can actually reassess and evaluate exactly. From the naughty kid in the corner, and just pointing at us saying,
"We got put in the naughty corner." We did.
Cheers in the naughty corner, boss. Rather than put at the fucking sun bacon.
All right. Well, one last one, guys, before we wrap it up, and this will be part 1 of 2 because we've got a lot more questions to swing at you guys, but not for the moment. With regards to everything that's happened in the last week, where do you guys see the functional fitness space going? Let's take 2 quick kind of angles from a performance aspect, and then from your general population, those that just want to be healthy.
I'll go for the performance one. I think personally, this is a very optimistic point of view. I think it could be the best thing that's happened to the sport of functional fitness, because I would love to see it become more of a league, and they have like what the sanctionals currently are, and then you have your professional CrossFitters. You have to win a sanctional to become a professional CrossFitter. Then you have a certain amount throughout the year within the season. There's actually an off season, so they can train like genuine athletes. maybe something like the I don't know exactly how it works, but say like the cycling league where you go, they do different races in different countries. To become a pro cyclist, you have to win a certain amount of those races. And then you have like semi-pro CrossFitters who are trying to make it onto the pro circuit. The pro circuit people get sponsorships, they get paid to actually do it, because I just feel sorry for CrossFitters. There's some people who are like top 40 in the world, an incredibly taxing sport. They don't see a cent for it. So I think it's so much potential for it to become an actual sport with a governing body. Yeah. I mean, that's a very optimistic viewpoint.
And it obviously depends on who actually takes over, because, you know, it could go either right or left.
100%. So like a pro card almost.
Yeah, exactly.
And then
like,
off that, you
okay. Bodybuilding style, like you have to win a certain comp to be a pro, and then you go onto the pro circuit. And those pro circuit comps would be like Wadapalooza, Dubai Fitness Championship, Strength in Depth. And athletes get to travel around the world. I mean, it would be a really interesting sport. You can actually have a season, because at the moment, like, programming for functional fitness is a fucking nightmare, because you're like, right, what are you going to do on the off season? They're like, what's that?
Yeah.
And then from a general perspective of, like, you know, the everyday box goer.
I think again, like, even before this whole CrossFit craze has gone down the past weekend, I mean, I was never pro with, you know, keeping a CrossFit name in a business. Like, if I had a CrossFit gym myself, and let's say it's already been like 3 years down the line, like I would always want it to detach from CrossFit, the name. I think, like, functional fitness, I think it'll be just great for general population, just because I feel, you know, CrossFit became too niched, and because it became too niched, it kind of like blocked doors from just other people in the general population who could potentially like and enjoy CrossFit, but, you know, because it's so niched, and there has been like kind of negative reviews about CrossFit.
It has that stigma.
It has that stigma. It's
culty.
Forever.
It's culty. That's the issue with the people outside. Uneducated, it's hard.
Exactly.
The problem is you always see the bad. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's CrossFit, whether it's bodybuilding or whatever, you always see the bad. The issue with CrossFit,
and I think, detaching from the name itself and from the brand name CrossFit would be just a good thing for any businesses out there who have de-affiliated. And I think for just general population, it'll be more accessible for a lot of people out there, for sure.
Easy.
Be a positive.
Yeah.
For sure.
100% agreed.
100%.
Cool. Well, that was a marvelous chat. Thanks for your time again, guys.
Good to see you as well.
Will definitely be a part 2.
No,
for sure.
He's got to buy a purple sofa to do these chats on in the future.
Why?
For a chat.
Oh, yeah.
Don't you like my friends in the background? These are my mates.
Definitely been talking.
I'm going to say, some people are sat on the back of their yacht doing their podcast with Joe Rogan's little room. Brother's got all his mates in the corner, and he's just chilling with his friends, isn't he?
Circuit breaker's got lonely, man.
Right, have they got names yet? Or?
Oh, 100%.
What are the names?
We'll get part 2 and we'll go nutrition
to go through. Yeah. Okay, wicked, guys. Well, a big thank you. And
good to see you.
Part 2 will be lovely.
Part 2, we'll figure it out for sure.
See you soon.
Yeah, hopefully the gym's open soon.